Good evening to all the members. I welcome you on behalf of Madras Tax Bar. Today we have two sessions back to back. The first session is by Mr. Rohan Muralidharan, who is going to give a talk on GST on alcohol, whether to charge or not to charge. And then thereafter we will have a round called Taskmaster, where Gokarnation sir will be asking questions to me and Nitin. So that will the entries for that will be from a different link which I have already shared. The details of it will be again shared here at the end of this session. So this session, Rohan will be presenting for 30 to 40 minutes, I suppose. And after that, we will have question answer round for the remaining time. And you can raise your hand or you can put in your query in the chat box. We will try to take as many questions as possible, depending on the limited time which we have today. So thank you very much once again. And Rohan, over to you.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Prithvi?
Yes, Rohan.
Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who took out their precious time and are attending this session. Without wasting much of the time, I will directly jump into the topic. The topic of today's seminar is GST on alcohol, to charge or not to charge. So why I chose this topic is because this particular issue is very intriguing to me, because there are a lot of constitutional perspectives to this topic, as well as there are certain interpretational issues in this topic insofar as the GST Act is concerned. So considering the wide-ranging issues which are flowing through in this industry, I chose this topic, and hopefully by the end of the session, you have something to think upon, because there are certain issues in this topic which we have answers to, but the government is not willing to implement those answers. And there are certain issues in this topic which we don't have answers to, and there are no clarifications which are coming either from the state government or from the central government. So this industry is going to suffer a lot of litigation in the near future. So this will be a good head start for all of us, and especially the legal fraternity in specific, as well as our tax practitioners, considering the mammoth issues that this industry is going to face. So firstly, first issue that I'm going to deal with is the constitutional aspects of alcohol. If we see, as in this is something which we all know, Article 246 of the Constitution lays down the legislative powers of the Parliament as well as the state legislatures. Under Article 246, the fields of legislations have been enumerated in Schedule 7 to the Constitution of India. Under Schedule 7, there are three lists again. List 1 deals with the union list, List 2 deals with the state list, and List 3 deals with concurrent list. So Article 246 gives the power to legislate, and the fields of legislation are enunciated in Schedule 7 under the three lists. Now, as we all know, the List 1, which is the union list, the Parliament has the exclusive power to legislate. List 3, which is the concurrent list, the Parliament and the state legislature have concurrent power to legislate. But if there is a conflict, if there is a repugnancy in the parliamentary law and the state legislature, then to that extent the parliamentary law will prevail. Insofar as List 2 is concerned, the state legislature has the exclusive power to legislate on the entries which are enunciated in List 2. Just to give a brief background on alcohol per se, alcoholic liquor for human consumption, in the sense that alcoholic liquor which is capable of being consumed by human beings, the excise duty on manufacture of that alcohol for human consumption, as well as the sales tax, the value added tax on the alcohol for human consumption, is the exclusive domain of the state legislature. Excise duty on alcohol for human consumption has been provided for in entry 51 to List 2, and VAT on alcohol for human consumption, sales tax on alcohol for human consumption, has been provided in entry 54 of List 2. for alcohols or other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption, other alcohols, the power to levy excise duty is with the union under entry 84 of list 1. I'll be coming to this list, but I just wanted to give you a brief primer. So all alcohol for human consumption, whether it is the power to levy excise duty on manufacture of such alcohol or power to levy VAT on sale of such alcohol, has always been the exclusive domain of the state legislature. The union does not have the power to levy excise duty or VAT on intrastate sales insofar as alcohol for human consumption is concerned. Now, what happened with the introduction of GST? Now, with the introduction of GST, the 101 constitutional amendment, they have introduced the definition of goods and service tax. Goods and service tax means any tax on supply of goods or services or both, except taxes on the supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So even after the introduction of GST, as we all know that excise duty, sales tax, which was VAT or CST, was subsumed into the GST regime, but the product alcoholic liquor for human consumption has not been subsumed. So the status quo as it was prior to 1st July 2017 continues even after the introduction of GST. The constitutional amendment did not touch alcoholic liquor for human consumption at all. That is outside the purview of GST. So they cannot levy GST insofar as supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned. So this is very clear from the definition of GST as well. Now, with the introduction of GST, the power to levy GST, as you all know, flows from Article 246 capital A. The power to impose GST. 246A1 says, notwithstanding anything contained in Article 246 and 254, Parliament and subject to clause 2, the legislature of every state have the power to make laws with respect to goods and service tax imposed by the union or by such state. 246A2 says, Parliament has the exclusive power to make laws with respect to goods and service tax, where the supply of goods or of services of both takes place in the course of interstate trade or commerce. So if it's an interstate supply, if it's a supply in the course of interstate trade or commerce, Parliament has the exclusive power to legislate. If it's an intrastate supply, if it's a supply within the state, then the state as well as the center has simultaneous power to legislate and levy GST. So interstate supply, the center only has the exclusive jurisdiction. If it's an intrastate supply, the state and the center has simultaneous jurisdiction. If you see, there was an explanation which was added to Article 246A. It says, in respect of goods and service tax referred to in clause 5 of Article 279A, 246A, which is this power to levy GST, will take effect from the date recommended by the Goods and Service Tax Council. GST Council, which is nothing but a committee of all the finance ministers, including the union minister, which gives recommendations on what tax to impose, how much, or what will be the rate of tax, etc. One such recommendatory power with the GST Council was with respect to certain goods as to when those goods will be brought into the ambit of GST. Which are those goods? If you see the fourth bullet here, petroleum crude, high-speed diesel, motor spirit, which is commonly known as petrol, natural gas and aviation turbine fuel. So these are the 5 products which will come into the GST ambit on a subsequent date. So these products are currently not within GST. They are being regulated by the erstwhile regulatory framework itself. These products are not within GST as of now, but they will eventually come into GST. If you see carefully here, alcoholic liquor for human consumption is not there. Because when they introduced the 101 constitutional amendment, they have decided that alcohol for human consumption will never be leviable to GST as the constitution stands today. And that is why if you see from the definition of GST, they have only excluded supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption because they want to maintain the status quo. Insofar as supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned, they don't want to levy GST on it constitutionally. Whereas for other 5 petroleum products, it is currently not being leviable to GST, but ultimately these 5 petroleum products will also merge into the GST regime. And what will be kept out? The only product which will be kept out of GST is only alcoholic liquor for human consumption. That is why this particular topic, insofar as alcoholic liquor is concerned, gains significance, because alcoholic liquor is under the state control, whereas all other products are under the central control, or rather it are under is within the ambit of GST. So to understand this issue further, we'll just look at the legislative entries. Now this is entry 84 under list 1. Now if we see that under entry 84, they have said duties of excise on tobacco and other goods manufactured or produced in India except alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption, all other goods were leviable to excise duty previously, and that excise duty will be levied by the state because it is under list 1. With the amendment or with the introduction of GST, the excise duty has been limited to these 5 products. So in the erstwhile regime, excise duty was leviable on all products except alcoholic liquor for human consumption. With the introduction of GST, excise duty is leviable only on these 5 products, which is petrol, high-speed diesel, motor spirit, aviation turbine fuel, tobacco and tobacco products. Now if we come to list 2, entry 8 says intoxicating liquors. That is to say, production, manufacture, possession, transport, purchase and sale of intoxicating liquors. This was the provision, or this was the entry prior to GST, and there has been no change with the introduction of GST regime. So intoxicating liquors continues to be governed by the state legislature. The state has the power to regulate intoxicating liquors, that is production, manufacture, possession, transportation, purchase and sale of intoxicating liquor. Duty on manufacture of alcohol for human consumption. That also there is no change. The state still has the power to levy excise duty on alcohol for human consumption. Then entry 54, which talks about taxes on sale and purchase of goods, which is our VAT, value added tax. Prior to GST as well as after the introduction of GST, the power to levy VAT on alcoholic liquor for human consumption still continues with the state legislature. So the sum and substance of this entire discussion is, insofar as alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned, the power to levy excise duty on manufacture of this alcoholic liquor for human consumption is with the state. The power to levy VAT, insofar as this alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned, is with the state only. The center does not have the power to levy any tax or any duty insofar as alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned. Now, with the introduction of GST, I'm just going to take you through the charging section of GST. It says central goods and service tax shall be levied on all intrastate supplies, on goods or services or both, on the value as determined as per section 50. If you see right side, there is an exception. Right? Supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption will not be leviable to GST under the Act, obviously because there is no constitutional power to levy tax or GST on alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So even the charging section under GST has excluded alcoholic liquor from human consumption from the taxable entry. Now, if you have noted that I have focused time and again on alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So the question which will arise is, are all alcoholic liquors capable of being consumed? Or when we say alcohol, does it only mean alcoholic liquor for human consumption, or can there be other types of alcohol? Now, if you see, there are broadly 3 categories of alcohol with my limited knowledge of chemistry. These are the 3 categories of alcohol. First is denatured alcohol. Second is non-denatured alcohol, yet in concentrated form. Third is non-denatured alcohol in diluted form, which is our general alcohol like whiskey, rum, vodka, etc. Now, what is the difference between these 3? Denatured alcohol is an alcohol which has certain additives which makes it toxic or poisonous to consume. This alcohol cannot be consumed by a normal human being. These are only used for industrial purposes, for other chemical preparations and solvents, etc. So denatured alcohol cannot be consumed by a human. If we come to third category, non-denatured alcohol in diluted form, which is our general alcohol that we get from our TASMARK shops. Now, this alcohol is capable of being consumed as such. So, while the first category is not capable of being consumed at all, that is denatured alcohol. So, insofar as denatured alcohol is concerned, we are very clear that the state does not have the power to levy excise duty or sales tax, because state only has the power to levy excise duty or sales tax only if it is alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Denatured alcohol is not fit for human consumption at all. So the state does not have the power to levy sales tax or excise duty on the manufacture and sale of denatured alcohol. So that we are very clear, there is no dispute on that. And this denatured alcohol is within the GST ambit also. I will come to the treatment under GST insofar as this denatured alcohol is concerned. But as of now, we can take a conclusion that denatured alcohol is not leviable to excise duty or VAT insofar as the list 2 is concerned, because list 2 only considers alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Denatured alcohol is not an alcoholic liquor for human consumption at all. Insofar as the third entry is concerned, non-denatured alcohol in diluted form, which is our normal alcoholic liquor. The third entry, again, there is no dispute on the fact that the third entry is within the exclusive domain of the state legislature, because that is alcoholic liquor for human consumption. The GST Act will not apply to the third category because the state has the exclusive domain to levy excise duty and sales tax insofar as the third category is concerned, because this is alcoholic liquor for human consumption as such. So the first category, the state does not have the power. It will fall within GST because it is not alcoholic liquor for human consumption. The third category, the state has the exclusive power because that is alcoholic liquor for human consumption, and the GST Act will not apply to the third category. Now we come to the controversial second category, which is where the entire debate is happening currently, and there is complete confusion on this. Second category is non-denatured alcohol, but in concentrated form. This is generally referred to as extra neutral alcohol or rectified spirit. Now, this particular product, the alcoholic content in this product is around 95%, 90 to 95% volume per volume. But this is not poisonous in the sense of denatured. But it cannot be consumed as such also. You need to dilute this particular non-denatured concentrated alcohol to make it palatable for human consumption. You need to dilute with waters and other flavoring, etc., to make it palatable for human consumption. So this particular second category is not poisonous or is not toxic per se, but the concentrate of alcoholic content is so high that no one can consume it as such. So the problem in the second category is that this particular category per se will not fall within alcoholic liquor for human consumption because it cannot be consumed as such. But if you dilute it further, if you add certain flavorings, then it can be consumed as such. So if I am a manufacturer of a non-denatured concentrated alcohol, and I sell that alcohol, whether that will be subject to excise duty and VAT, value added tax by the state, or because that is not alcoholic liquor for human consumption, that will be subject to GST. So whether this non-denatured concentrated alcohol, which cannot be consumed as such, but it can be consumed after subsequent dilution, whether this will fall within entry 51 and 54 of list 2, which is excise duty and sales tax on the sale and manufacture of alcoholic liquor for human consumption, or whether it will not qualify as alcoholic liquor for human consumption and the state's jurisdiction to tax this will be ousted, and it will come within the ambit of the GST. So this will be my inquiry in the following slides. So what is alcoholic liquor for human consumption? Now this is a widely debated topic and there has been immense jurisprudence even prior to GST. Even prior to GST, because if it's alcoholic liquor for human consumption, then the state has the power to levy excise duty. If it is alcohol other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption, then the center will have the power to levy excise duty. So the first case on this point was the case of synthetics and chemicals. This is a 7-judge bench of the Honorable Supreme Court. Synthetics and chemicals versus state of UP. This was pronounced in 1990. In this case, various states had enacted legislations which empowered them to collect fees and excise duty on industrial alcohol from manufacturers. So here the issue was on manufacture of industrial alcohol, and they were levying certain excise duty and fees. The question which arose before the court was whether the state legislature has the power to levy excise duty on this industrial alcohol, and whether they have the power to levy fee in respect of transport or some other activities insofar as this industrial alcohol is concerned. The Honorable Supreme Court in synthetics and chemicals, it's a seminal judgment. There has been a lot of discussion, and after discussing the various jurisprudence, they say that entry 51, which says excise duty on alcoholic liquor for human consumption, it will not cover industrial alcohol. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption will only encapsulate within its ambit only those alcohol which can be consumed as such, which is capable or which is fit for drinking as such. If you have to do some other process to make it consumable, then till that moment, it is not an alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Even if it can be converted into potable alcohol, into drinkable alcohol, into consumable alcohol, till the point it is not converted into that alcoholic liquor which can be consumed as such, till that point of time, this will not qualify as alcoholic liquor for human consumption, and the state will not have the power to levy excise duty. So they were very unequivocal in their ruling that alcoholic liquor for human consumption will only include that alcoholic liquor which is capable of being consumed as such, which is fit for consumption as such. Now there was, as we had seen previously, entry 8 of list 2 also said intoxicating liquor. So the state tried to argue that intoxicating liquor is still within the state legislature. This intoxicating liquor will include alcohol for human consumption as well as alcohol other than for human consumption, because intoxicating liquor is very wide. So they will have the power to levy fees and other charges insofar as industrial alcohol is concerned. The excise duty was taken care by entry 51, but the issue was with respect to other fees also. They said the other fees will be covered under entry 8 of list 2 because that talks about intoxicating liquor and not per se alcoholic liquor for human consumption. The court concluded that intoxicating liquor must be construed as alcohol for human consumption only. In this regard, they placed reliance on Article 47 of the Indian Constitution, which deals with directive principles of state policy. There it said, the state shall endeavor to bring about prohibition of the consumption of alcohol, prohibition of the consumption except for medicinal purposes of intoxicating drinks. So they said that the state shall endeavor prohibition of intoxicating drinks. So once they used the word intoxicating drinks here, the same meaning has to be given to intoxicating liquor. So only those intoxicating liquor which can be consumed as such will be covered under entry 8 as well. So they do not have the power to levy any fee insofar as industrial liquor is concerned, which is not capable of being consumed as such. But they also held that the state has been conferred with the power to regulate the industries to ensure that this industrial alcohol is not converted into potable alcohol, to ensure that there is no abuse in terms of converting this industrial alcohol into alcohol for human consumption. They have the power to regulate that, but they cannot levy any fee independent of this insofar as industrial alcohol is concerned, because they only have the power to regulate alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Now, next case which we come to is the case of Modi Distilleries. This is a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court. In this case, the issue was with respect to wastage of liquor during transportation, after distillation, before dilution, and pipeline wastage of liquor during the process of manufacture prior to dilution. So whether this liquor, which is post distillation prior to dilution, or a pipeline wastage, which is after manufacture but prior to dilution, whether the state will have the power to levy excise duty on this. The court followed the decision of Synthetics and Chemicals. They said, okay, only after dilution, whether this alcohol will become alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Prior to dilution, this alcohol is not alcoholic liquor for human consumption because this is not fit for human consumption. So the states will not have the power to levy excise duty prior to the dilution state when that alcohol can be consumed as such by an individual or a consumer. So this was the jurisprudence which was set out by Synthetics and Chemicals and by the judgment of Modi Distilleries. Then came the judgment of Bihar Distilleries versus Union of India. This is a two-judge bench. In this judgment, again, the issue was with respect to manufacture of rectified spirit, as to who has the power to regulate this, whether the state will have the power to regulate this or not. The assessee argued as to what was held in Synthetics and Chemicals. They said that rectified spirit is not alcoholic liquor for human consumption per se. This has to be diluted further. Therefore, the state will not have the power to regulate this rectified spirit alcohol because this is not alcoholic liquor for human consumption. The court departed from Synthetics and Chemicals. They said that Synthetics and Chemicals, when it said that industrial alcohol is not capable of being consumed as such, they were only dealing with denatured rectified spirit. Denatured rectified spirit means that cannot be converted into consumable alcohol. So the court in Synthetics and Chemicals was only dealing with denatured rectified spirit, which cannot be converted into alcohol for human consumption. So as regards that alcoholic liquor, which is non-denatured and which can be diluted to make alcoholic liquor for human consumption, Synthetics and Chemicals is not the law on that point. So they said line of demarcation can and should be drawn at the stage of clearance or removal of rectified spirit. Where the removal of clearance is for industrial purposes, which is other than manufacture of potable liquor, the levy of duty of excise and all other control shall be with union. But where this removal of rectified spirit, which is not capable of being consumed as such, but it is removed for further manufacture of alcoholic liquor for human consumption, then the power to levy excise duty is with the state. So even though it cannot be consumed as such, they said you have to see the end use. If the end use is to convert it into potable alcohol, then even at the concentrate level, even though it cannot be consumed as such, the state will have the power to levy excise duty. This is non-denatured alcohol, which is in concentrated form. If it's ultimately being converted into alcoholic liquor for human consumption, then even at the stage of manufacture of this non-denatured alcohol, the state will have the power to levy excise duty. This was a clear departure from the decision of Synthetics and Chemicals, because Synthetics and Chemicals said you look at the end use, and if the end use, in the sense that if the clearance is of alcoholic liquor which can be consumed as such, only then the state will have the power to levy excise duty. If the clearance is at this one stage before that, in the sense that you have to do some more processes to make it consumable, then the state will not have the power. The Bihar distillery case distinguished Synthetics and Chemicals to say the alcohol considered in that case was denatured rectified spirit only. That is why that decision is not applicable insofar as non-denatured concentrated alcohol is concerned. This variance between Bihar distillery and Synthetics and Chemicals was noticed by the Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Deccan Sugars. They said that there is a clear departure in Bihar distilleries, but they referred the matter to a larger bench, a 3-judge bench, to finally settle the matter. So the matter was finally settled in the case of Deccan Sugars again, which is a 3-judge bench. They said that Synthetics and Chemicals is the good law, and only if the final manufactured product which is sold is alcoholic liquor of human consumption, which is fit for human consumption in the form in which it is cleared, only then will the state have the power to levy excise duty and VAT. If it is the stage before that, irrespective of whether it is cleared for converting into potable alcohol, till that point in time, the state will not have the power to levy excise duty. That will be the exclusive jurisdiction of the union. So they said, you don't go by what is it used for. You see the form and manner in which it is cleared. If the form and manner in which it is cleared is alcoholic liquor for human consumption as such, only then will the state have the power to levy excise duty. So, seeing all this, where are we? Insofar as denatured alcohol is concerned, we have no doubts it is within GST. Insofar as non-denatured concentrated alcohol is concerned, there is still dispute going on. States wants to levy excise duty on that, saying that ultimately it is converted into alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So this matter was referred to the GST Council. The GST Council took the opinion of Joint Secretary Tax Research Unit, CBIC, and that opinion also said that these will be leviable to GST only because they are not fit for human consumption as such. Still the states objected, and then they sought the opinion of the Attorney General of India. Attorney General again relied on synthetics to say that non-denatured alcohol in concentrated form will be leviable to GST only because it is not fit for human consumption in that form. GST Council is yet to take a final decision on this. There have been multiple GST Council meetings, but no decision has been taken on this, and the matter is pending from 2018 itself. But the fundamental question is, can GST Council take any decision on this? This is a constitutional mandate. Entry 54 clearly says alcoholic liquor for human consumption. We have a 7-judge bench on that point as to what is alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Even if the GST Council says that the state has the power to levy excise duty, that particular decision will not be binding on the assessee, and this will definitely be challenged before a court of law unless there is a constitutional amendment in the legislative entries to ensure that this non-denatured alcohol, which is in a concentrated form, is not leviable to GST. Now, when we come to the rate structure, we see insofar as denatured alcohol is concerned, which is serial number 25, a rate of 18% has been specifically provided. So this denatured alcohol is leviable to 18%. There is no entry insofar as non-denatured alcohol is concerned. Non-denatured alcohol in concentrated form, there is no entry. But to my mind, there is a residuary entry in GST itself, in the rate notification, serial number 453, which is any chapter. To my mind, a non-denatured alcohol in concentrated form will fall within the residuary entry because non-denatured alcohol, there is HSN provides a classification for this in 2207-1011. So there is a classification under HSN for this particular non-denatured alcohol in concentrated form. Just that there is no specific entry in the GST rate notification. Because there is no specific entry, serial number 453, which is the residuary entry, which says any chapter, non-denatured alcohol in concentrated form will fall within this. Unless there is a constitutional amendment to set right this position, to my mind, non-denatured alcohol, irrespective of whether it is cleared for industrial purposes or for consuming or for converting into alcoholic liquor for human consumption, at the point in time which it's cleared, it will be leviable to GST. So now we have seen the constitutional issues with respect to taxability of this particular alcoholic liquor for human consumption as to what is its ambit. Now I will deal with a small issue within the GST Act itself. There is a small interpretative issue within the GST Act itself. Now, if we see the definition of goods, as we all know, GST is a tax on supply of goods or services. Definition of goods says goods means every kind of movable property. Movable property is nothing but a personal property of an individual which he can own, which he can purchase and sell in the market. So every kind of movable property is falling within the ambit of goods. So automatically even alcohol will fall within the ambit of goods. Their goods definition under GST does not exclude alcohol. So goods will mean alcohol. By alcohol here I mean alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So goods will include alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Only the charging section says that supply of goods will not include, rather GST will not be leviable on supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. There is no other exclusion insofar as alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned. So goods definition per se includes alcohol. Now we come to the definition of taxable supply and non-taxable supply. Taxable supply means supply of goods which is leviable to tax. Non-taxable supply means supply of goods which is not leviable to tax. By tax here I mean GST. So insofar as alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned, it's a supply of goods, but it is not leviable to tax. So it will not fall within taxable supply. Because taxable supply is only those supply of goods which are leviable to tax. Alcoholic liquor is not a supply of goods which is leviable to tax. So therefore automatically it will fall under non-taxable supply. Alcoholic liquor is a supply of goods which is not leviable to tax. So supply of alcoholic liquor is a non-taxable supply. Now this distinction is very important, as I will come to my next example. Now let us say we will take a case study. ABC Limited is engaged in the business of manufacture and sale of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So they are engaged in the alcoholic liquor for engaged in manufacture and sale of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. To supply the alcohol, ABC pours the same in a glass bottle and packs it in a carton box and delivers the same to the customer. The consolidated price for sale of one bottle is rupees 10,000. Let us assume it's a high-end alcohol. So in this case, there is supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. There is a bottle in which that alcohol is poured into, and there is an outer carton in which that bottle is kept in, and the ultimate sale is of alcohol within the bottle inside a carton. So insofar as alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned, we are very clear that VAT is leviable and excise duty is leviable. But what about the carton? What about the bottle? Only alcoholic liquor for human consumption is kept outside GST. So whether glass bottle and the packing material, the carton box, will be leviable to GST. If so, whether, because there is a consolidated price, how will you determine the value for paying GST on the bottle and the packing material? So whether this supply will be leviable to GST in its entirety, the entire 10,000 will be leviable to GST. Alternatively, only carton box and the bottle will be leviable to GST. If that is the case, how do you arrive at the value? Now, to understand this further, there is a concept of composite supply and mixed supply. Composite supply is a supply comprising of two or more taxable supplies, which are naturally bundled and supplied in conjunction with each other in the ordinary course of business, one of which is a principal supply. So composite supplies, two or more taxable supplies supplied in conjunction with each other in the ordinary course of business, and one of which is a principal supply. Principal supply is a supply which is the predominant element in the two or more supply. So whichever is the supply which gives the predominant element to the bundle of supplies, that will be the principal supply in the composite supply. Whereas mixed supply are two or more individual supplies for a single price, where such supply does not constitute a composite supply. So composite supply is two or more taxable supply, one of which is a principal supply. Mixed supply is a supply other than a composite supply, which is mixed supply is two or more individual supplies other than a composite supply for a single price. Now, how to tax this composite supply and mixed supply? As we all know, in case of composite supply, the tax payable will be the rate which is applicable to principal supply, and in case of mixed supply, the tax payable will be the highest rate which is applicable to the underlying supplies which are made in that bundle of supplies. So composite supply, the tax rate for the entire bundle of the composite supply, the two or more supplies, will be the tax rate applicable to the principal supply, whereas mixed supply, the highest rate which is applicable in the entire bundle, that will apply to the entire mixed supply. In this case, in the example that I had given, there are two or more supplies. There is a supply of alcohol, there is a supply of packing material, there is a supply of bottle. So now, what can be the different answers in this? First is whether the concept of composite supply can apply here for this entire bundle, glass bottle, packing case, along with alcohol, whether the concept of composite supply can apply here. To my mind, it cannot be applied here because composite supply, as we all saw, are two or more taxable supplies. Taxable supplies are those supplies which are leviable to tax. Because in this bundle we have alcohol. Alcohol is not a taxable supply. So the concept of composite supply will not apply here. So far so good. What is the concept of mixed supply? Mixed supply means two or more supplies. It says two or more individual supplies for a single price. As we saw that supply of alcohol is also supply of goods. So there is supply of alcohol. Mixed supply definition does not say taxable supply. It says two or more individual supplies for a single price. So there is a supply of alcohol, there is supply of a bottle, and there is supply of a packing, the casing. So there are two or more supplies. There is a single price. So whether a view can be taken that the entire amount will be taxable under GST at the highest rate of tax which is applicable. So two or more supplies for a single price. So the treatment will be tax payable at the highest rate of the applicable rates. So whether the entire 10,000 will be taxable under GST at the highest rate which is applicable. In my mind, this particular conclusion is incongruous because mixed supply presupposes that there is a supply which is taxable under GST. By the concept of mixed supply, you cannot bring within the ambit a supply which is otherwise not taxable under GST, because that will be colorable legislation. Because mixed supply is nonetheless a concept within the four corners of GST law. If the GST law per se will not apply to alcoholic liquor for human consumption, then by concept of mixed supply, merely because it says supply of two or more goods, alcohol will not come within the ambit of mixed supply. That is why the concept of mixed supply may also fail in this transaction. So next step, what is the third view? Whether this bottle and casing or the packing can be subject to GST alone, and general principles of apportionment must apply. That yes, 10,000 is the full value, but you need to apportion, because on a particular supply within that bundle, VAT is payable and excise duty is payable under the state, under list 2, and the remaining bundle is leviable to GST. So should you apportion the value between the bottle and casing in one hand and the alcohol per se on the other hand? But the law does not provide for this apportionment. So the general principles of apportionment should be applied, and only bottle and casing should be taxed under GST and not the entire transaction. That is something which we will have to argue, and this transaction, as in this particular treatment, has to judicially evolve. The final issue or the final interpretation that I have is, can the entire bottle and casing be classified as alcoholic liquor itself? Because bottle and casing is specifically manufactured, so to say, to contain that alcohol. The alcohol is poured into a specifically designed bottle, and that bottle is put in a specifically designed casing. So whether the entire bundle, can we say the bottle and casing, the classification applies to applicable to alcohol, will also apply to the bottle and casing. Now, why I am saying that? Now, in the general rules of interpretation to HSN, there is a note 5 to the general rules of interpretation. What does that note 5 say? Note 5 says, in addition to the foregoing provisions, the following rules shall apply in respect of goods referred to therein. First is camera cases, musical instruments, so and so, and similar containers, specifically shaped or fitted to contain a specific article or set of article suitable for long-term use and presented with the article for which they are intended, shall be classified with such articles when of a kind normally sold therewith. And clause B says that packing materials and packing containers presented with the goods therein shall be classified with the goods if they are if they are of a kind normally used for packing such goods. So in my case, can I take an argument that the bottle as well as the packing material, they are specifically designed to hold the alcohol within it. So the classification of the bottle and the packing material will be that of the alcohol itself by application of Rule 5. This general rule of interpretation has been borrowed for classification under GST as well. So can I apply the general rule of interpretation to say that because the classification itself will be with alcohol, these products will not come within the ambit of GST at all, because the classification will be 2207, alcoholic liquor for human consumption, which the GST law does not have the power to tax. Applying the general rules of interpretation, can I say that there cannot be these particular casing as well as the bottle cannot be taxed within GST as well. Now, this again is my interpretation. Definitely, there may be certain issues which I'm not aware with this interpretation, but I thought this is something that we can think about. Like, considering the paucity of time, I'll just refer to my last issue on this. Now, take a case where a hotel offers a full course buffet, including cocktails and other alcoholic drinks. The price of the buffet is 3,000 all inclusive. So, inclusive of all taxes, there is a buffet which is offered by a hotel. That buffet is including cocktails and alcoholic drinks. Now, as we all know, that supply of food other than alcohol is leviable to GST. So, other than alcohol, all other goods and services are leviable to GST. Whereas alcohol, again, sale of alcohol is leviable to VAT. So, this is another transaction wherein within one bundle itself, there is a part of the supply which is leviable to GST, whereas there is another part which is leviable to VAT. So, how do they tax this transaction again? Now, insofar as supply of food in a restaurant other than alcoholic liquor for human consumption, it is deemed to be a supply of service under GST. So, the entire food which is served other than alcohol is a supply of service. So, there is one supply of service of food other than alcohol, and there is one supply of goods which is alcoholic liquor for human consumption for one composite price. So, how to tax this transaction and how to apportion a value? This is an issue which the entire restaurant industry is facing. The stopgap measure that they have taken is that generally these buffets have a buffet scheme wherein, let us say, 2,000 is without alcohol inclusive of all taxes and 3,000 is with alcohol inclusive of all taxes. So the differential between the scheme or the buffet course without alcohol and with alcohol, that differential is taken to be the consideration for alcohol, and they are discharging GST, rather they are discharging state VAT on that particular differentiation, which is the difference between the buffet with alcohol and buffet without alcohol. That is the stopgap measure which they have taken. That is why we generally see that in the industry, buffet with alcohol for a composite price is not generally offered because of these issues as well. And another aspect or another way of looking at this is, can the general principle of apportionment can apply that in a particular month, how much is the alcohol which is used for providing this buffet services? Can I apply some accounting principles of cost plus or some other mechanism to arrive at the value which is attributable to this alcohol which is sold, and the balance will be the food which is served and which will be leviable to the difference, as in the balance will be leviable to GST, and whatever is the value attributable to alcoholic liquor will be leviable to VAT. But to be on the safe side, considering the difficulties in the apportionment, the restaurants either are not providing buffets with alcohol, or if they are providing, the difference between the buffet without alcohol and buffet with alcohol, that difference is taxed under VAT, which is alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So these are the few issues that I thought I'll deal with. I had certain other issues, but considering the paucity of time, I'll just share the slides. If someone has any doubts on that, we can discuss it offline. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. Now, if there are any doubts, or if you feel that I have gone wrong somewhere, you can let me know. This is a learning exercise for me as well. This is a new challenge for me and I took it up. So thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity. I'll take up if there are any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohan. Rohan, if you can stop sharing the screen.
Yeah.
So thank you. I think we will be able to take up 1 or 2 questions max, because considering that we have another session right now.
Yeah, sure.
So I think the first question is from Aparna ma'am. I'll just unmute.
Rohan?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Fantastic session. There's no question. In fact, I wanted to discuss. It'll lead to a very long discussion when we start discussing about the restaurant with bars. You already addressed it in a brief manner. Fantastic session. lot of litigation is going to come in this, as you rightly said.
Yes.
You did a very good job. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for the inputs that you gave.
Thank
That's
you.
all. I don't have any questions. I just want
All
to
right.
say this.
So I think before the session started, we asked a question. In fact, Dr. Krishnanand also asked, like, if why didn't we take up petrol, because even that petrol is exempted from GST, petrol and diesel. So I think we can have one more session by you where you can cover the questions under GST from alcohol, as well as you can deal with petrol also.
Sure.
If we can fix up a session for that
Definitely.
sometime soon, and then we can take up the questions for this topic, as well as you can elaborate on petrol and diesel.
Definitely.
So I think we will end the session now. There are a few questions in chat box, but I think as Aparna ma'am has rightly said, if we start discussing on it, it will go on for longer time. So we will take up those questions in the next session. So thank you, Rohan, once again for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Look forward in hearing from you in the upcoming sessions as
Yeah. Thank you so much.
and thanks participants for joining us. I hope you all join us for the next session, which is just going to start immediately after the session is over. The link I can also share it once again in this chat box, or I've already shared it in the group. You can access through that, and I will share it here also. If I could request my friend Nitin to share the link in the chat box, please. So thank you once again, all of you, for joining us. See you in the next session.